Hello, friends. Good afternoon. Welcome back. I make these podcasts to talk about mental prevention in order to name the things that each of us carry, to look for answers and solutions to help ourselves when necessary, because we all have the power to do that. Each one of us is both a teacher and a student to ourselves. Grow to like these roles, but don't worry about them. Learning is something valuable. To learn means that we are inquisitive about life. And this is the continuation of our previous theme. What blocks us and why do we suffer? What prevents us from going on the path of healthier and joyful change? And how do we hurt ourselves? Consciously or unconsciously. And we move ourselves away from the path of harmony and change in a rather more constructive way. So, what's in the way? Today we will continue with part 2. We will continue with these points, which we did not manage to look at the last time. What remains after we face the facts, that we see what's missing, and the negative? We feed what's missing. We don't understand that we're giving it value. This is the first thing we discussed in part 1. The second thing that we looked at in the first podcast, in the first part, is also that we value what we have lost, and when it is no longer a part of us, because before that, we took it for granted and failed to nourish it with our attention, gratitude, and a revision of what value and benefit it carries. Today, we will continue. The third thing, which is extremely important, it comes out every day in my therapy with clients. You yourself, too, most likely feel it and encounter it. It's basically seeing the pain, the sorrow, the disappointment. As if we have become more reliant on pain, we recognize the mechanism of injury and suffering more clearly. We may not be dependent on any other stimulants, but we can become dependent precisely on negativity, on unhappiness, and on this immersion into the familiar pain. This sometimes becomes really an addiction. Look at it. If every day we need to have an experience like this, or to have that focus, or a given situation in which our outlook is only through this negative experience, through the pain, through scarcity, through poor adaptability, whatever happens with you, there's somehow a need to deliver this daily dose of fear. The more we think, the more we focus on the thoughts of fear, uncertainty, and problems, we will increasingly attract fears and problems into our daily lives, or something inside will make us turn that focus and look through those eyes of pain and fear. With regard to this point, I ask you to take a look at and revise yourself. It is very important to change the focus of our thinking, our perception, our attitude. This is the step we are now working on related to our codependence. Whether we have developed a dependence on pain, grief, deficits, and negativity, take a look at how you react. Do you need this dose of unhappiness and pain? Is there something inside you that gets stronger and makes you react first through the filters and the gaze of fear, of negativity? Maybe we're acting out of a habit. We fail to look more broadly at the picture and the different topics we are going through and the steps we are taking. But please, try to become that observer of yourself, this researcher, this therapist, who can look without judgment and criticism. But see the truth. See if you have developed dependence on pain and misfortune. Somehow, do you live with it in certain doses? First, you tend to look at what's wrong, what strains you, what fails, what will again be repeated as a negative. How someone doesn't change and he or she will only have a limiting or unpleasant reaction. How we will not deal with something. How the other will never change. This focus on ourselves and the other is connected precisely with what's missing. Through doubt, through fear, through insult and anger. And they take too much of our focus and our space, and this builds our inner world. And you know very well that our inner world, where we mostly prevail, is something that will create the inner feeling and our inner emotions, which will then be expressed outwardly as well. External reality will begin to open one by one these topics, which we internally for a long time rotate and transfer internally into ourselves. How does that sound to you? Do you recognize anything about yourself? Do you have this dependence on pain, grief, negativity? Do you recognize something? Do you think that you often reside in that? So let us have a moment of mutual revelation about ourselves. We can sometimes carry out this process unconsciously, but any unconscious process can become significantly conscious or have a focus to pay attention to how we react and act in life. Hence comes our habit when the past is being too present in our reality. Usually in our present experience and action, the way we perceive what happens to us, very often we perceive it through our past experience. But what we often bring back from the past again is our pain. We remain shackled and attached to what has badly hurt us, to what we lacked, what was left as a sense of betrayal or violation in the relationship of love, a kind attitude, if it was missing, a good word, a compliment, being proud of each other, the praise, acceptance, the permission of weakness. See this also. Pay attention to whether you are bringing back from the past too many things into the present, whether you are reacting to other people or to the current situation through pain, grief, and traumas of the past. You may not realize this. Our reality has too many requirements. Fighting, acting, chasing time, tasks. But try to give yourself a little time for rest, for silence, and turn to yourself and look at whether you do any of these things and if they are valid for you. How far have we been able to let go of the past, which keeps pulling us back with its fear and pain of what has happened? Very often we continue to chew on it. People come to me and talk about what bothers and worries them. And at some point, we realize by asking questions and analyzing that to a large extent, they are explaining something that has happened to them before from the past. How someone didn't appreciate them in the past. How he lied. How she betrayed them. How he roughed them up. How she didn't value them. And when I ask what was happening at that moment, is that present in the same way? People realize that they talk too much in the present about what happened before. It's like it hasn't been reworked. It hasn't been experienced. We haven't been able to find the lesson. The lesson. To reformulate the boundaries, to see how we've been damaged ourselves in order for the wounds to appear. And when we haven't been able to rework it, to let it go, to accept that it happened, to see what we can learn from this situation. We continue to be captives of this pain, this betrayal, this loss, this fear, and every day we start to spin it in our heads when we have the time. Whether to talk about it with our friends, whether to share it in a session with a therapist, or when we are all alone with ourselves, we go back to it again. Going back shows us that we need to see what this situation is, this relationship with a person, this particular moment that we haven't reworked. If we have really dealt with this past situation, if we haven't worked on it, it has passed through our heart, through the mind of the heart, through the emotion of the heart, through the revelation. We will not return so often in our daily present to this experience. We're not going to bring it back as something that still harasses us, poisons, and has influence on us, because we'll have changed it. We will have transformed it for something concrete to return, to be present with this intensity, to come out on the smallest occasion in reality and everyday life. Because different occasions can bring us back to this situation. That's an indication that this situation isn't really clean yet. If you have such a situation, such a return, See what it is and take the time and space to realize that there is something that continues to be alive enough, painful for you. There's something that hasn't been reworked. There is something you need to learn so that you can free yourself and feel some relief toward this situation. Understand that if we have thought about something, realized it, and felt relieved, and we have truly released it, will it come back to us so often? Will it come out? Will it knock on the surface of consciousness to remind us of itself? The other thing we need to understand and explore for ourselves is that when we try to block the negative experience, when we want to hide something, it's because it brings out hurt and feelings of shame, guilt, fear of admitting a failure, a mistake, blaming the other or ourselves. See what it is that makes you block that negative feeling or experience. If you're trying to hide it, sweep it, like we say, under the rug, it's not going to be cleared and truly remade. And it's going to find different paths and ways to remind you of itself and show you that it's still there, swallowed, without being truly conscious and processed. During a training I went to by Peter Sage, which I liked very much, I had back then a personal problem, which I was analyzing, trying to look at some of my hurt and work with personal failure. He said, "Look, to make it easier and feel relief for what you experienced when it's negative or painful, when you made a choice that you later blamed yourself for or became angry about doing, celebrate every single result, and especially the negative ones." That sentence touched me so much. It was like a crucial moment, and I said, yes, I actually do not celebrate my own failures, and I do not celebrate and give myself the time to experience this negative process that is happening to me. So, take this thought, see how it sits with you, how you will connect with it. Celebrate every single result, especially the negative one. That was therapeutic for me. After it was over, I called my girlfriends and said, I want to meet, that we had an occasion to celebrate, and that we should meet and have a drink and smile at those experiences and choices that were negative, or when we felt we failed. Why should we celebrate it? Why smile at this negative result or something we've lost and made a mistake about? Because mistakes, negativity, and failures are a part of our path. We have no way of learning and growing up if we're never wrong, if we don't go through some pain. I even had a question from someone who had written to me, Maggie, you talk a lot about the experience and the living through the pain, meeting with the shadow, that we learn from ourselves and from experiences, but we learn even more through the negative moments. Why can't we learn from the good, from the joy, from what's resourceful? Of course, we can learn from the good and the positive, but we're very lazy then. We relax, we immerse ourselves in the given pleasure, and then we cannot really look at things. It is as if we get lazy to change things. We become passive in the consumption of the pleasure that it is giving us at this moment. At some point, however, we start not to appreciate this pleasure. We miss this good opportunity that we have, as if we are getting used to it. Our senses are adapting. In the beginning, it was all pleasure, joy, enthusiasm, all nice, but at some point, we adapted. Pleasure levels fall. There comes this common, even feeling. We begin to not perceive it with such enthusiasm. Somehow we accept it as something that is already natural, a habit, and we start thinking about something else. We create in ourselves some kind of new provocation. The provocation is that we go to develop, to learn something else, to give ourselves another pleasure, to seek. We are seekers. We need action. But what most stimulates us to learn, to grow, to realize things, to evaluate, to revise our experiences and our thoughts, is unfortunately the painful situation. the pain that occurs, the hurt, the absence, the wounds. That's what strikes us. So it's nice to pay attention and revise it, or create another track that pain is a path to resource. Loss leads us to a meeting with possibility. What we are lacking teaches us to appreciate what we have already achieved or have, not to fear that pain, negativity, limitation. On the contrary, let's see how much meaning it can give us, how this will make us think quickly, to quickly pay attention, to think about what we can see as a benefit, as a meaning, as a lesson, as a utility to enjoy it, or go down that path and connect more with the resource. But let's go back to what was extremely useful and therapeutic to me. Celebrate every single result, especially the negative one. Are you celebrating your negative results? Do you smile at them? Do you celebrate them? Do you see that they give you strength and they offer you a resource? They allow you to do a revision, to look into yourself. That this negative result or these failures want to show you that you are already able to realize the necessary change. You are already on the verge of seeing what the limiting or negative patterns are which have held you back. What did you not clearly see and you served some pattern that led you to this result? The mind and the ego are what judge the result as bad. If we try to get beyond that fear of the negative bad result, we may find another meaning. We can find something to celebrate. I advise you to organize for yourself such an evening, or such a lunch, or such a moment to celebrate your negative results, or something that was painful for you, your losses. Celebrate them. Losing money, work, or a certain place, through the change of your emotion and condition, try to smile at that pain. Tell yourself, in the end, it happened. After all, I lost that. Yep, I didn't judge it well. Or yes, the time has come for me to split up with that person. But let's smile. A smile will lead us to turning to ourselves and seeing the positive things, or what it's time to learn about ourselves. Maybe I didn't appreciate the person who was there for me at the time. Did I overdo it with criticism and demands? Whether I transferred too much of my requirements and expectations onto him or her, and I was annoyed that he or she wasn't living up to my expectations and my model. Whether I have been too masochistic with myself for quite too long. I have made too many compromises. I have not declared myself, and thus I have lost my own self-respect. And this partner who I lost, and who disrespected me, has shown me that it's time for me to grow up and have more self-respect and revise those boundaries. Whether the money we gave when we took a big risk in order to be able to do something better for ourselves, we weren't accountable for that money. We didn't appreciate it enough. Maybe we could have given ourselves more when we had it, not to fall too much into the desire and the requirements, when we didn't check on the person we were going to work with, when we trusted someone else's words. A person said one thing, another said a third, and you rely on what other people said. You don't rely on your own personal intuition, your personal feeling, being responsible for money or work, to reside there, to show up, to study, to support. Things which, when we fail to do them, the lessons from the outside will come. But it was a really important moment for me when I had this realization. We celebrate our failures, our negative results, our faults and self-pity in some way, the accusation. Then I felt better. I was able to accept this situation more easily and let it go. I reduced my arrogance. I had started being arrogant and rude. Because when I can't accept that loss or my poor judgment, this accusation personally that I've had towards myself, there comes the rudeness and the arrogance through the self-pity. But that helped me. See if it will help you and make you feel better. I share this as a personal experience in my personal work, which I did for myself. I worked through this, and it had an extremely relieving effect on me, and I realized that I was ashamed of my own failure. It's like I haven't been able to assimilate that I've gone so far as to have such tremendous loss or neglect or oversight. I blamed myself for the negligence I had showed. After all, just so you know, everything has its cost. We go into debt. Sometimes we accept it easily, sometimes it's harder. The treatment time and the result comes differently for each of us. But don't be afraid and do not worry. Sometimes we need more time for certain topics. We can't handle it in the same way in every situation. Some will need more time to accept the loss of money, others of work, a third, his or her personal life and partner, because we all have different fixations and obsessions. The important thing is to see if you have too much fixation on something, an obsession. That is associated with increasing our unconscious obsession with importance, where we dig too much. It's about creating a force of hyper-importance. When it's super important to have a lot of money, when this job or that exact partner is very, very important, then there's compulsive thinking. Try to see if you also have such a part, such an element in a given area in your life. Because where we have this intrusive way of thinking, this feeling, we want this particular person in this particular way, this particular job. Money is very important to me. I must have more. I must experience exactly this thing with exactly that partner. I must give him or her this. He or she should give me that. It cannot be someone else. It cannot be any other way. It can't be another job. It becomes an intrusiveness in our way of thinking. Then we increase too much the importance of this person, of this situation, of that money, and that power creates a force of interaction. You should know that. And thus we increase the uncertainty and the stress. The more I obsess about something, I may not realize that this is how I increase the hidden, the secondary, that I fear that I might lose this particular person, that the money will completely disappear in some way that I am obsessed with. The great, huge importance activates the feeling of fear even more. And there comes the stress that I can create more obstacles to losing it. To lose the person, the situation, the job, the money. When we increase this intrusiveness, then comes this counteraction. The reality somehow counteracts to this happening to us. The resistance and the loss come to show us that this obsession, this intrusiveness, this obsession is not useful to us, and this way we may miss some other opportunities and alternatives around us. The more we stew on something at all costs, the more we increase the power of dependent attachment, according to spiritual psychology. The more we increase the power of dependent attachment, the more we carry out a process of non-plasticity, stagnation, and we chain ourselves to it. The more we increase the inner weakness and the unconscious fear of losing it, because then we may fall apart, and we won't be able to rely on ourselves in a healthy and fulfilling way. This is the other thing that is nice to look at and think about in your everyday life, in your own personal themes. The other thing that you can look at is whether you're running away too much from personal responsibility. We talk about that very often. The personal responsibility and looking too much into the psychic garden and patterns of other people. We don't stand in our personal responsibility. We don't revise our own mental garden, our thoughts and problems, our responsibility towards them, our deficits, what I want to change based on that experience, how to change it. And we start getting out of our personal psychic garden because we don't like working on ourselves. We want to remain the same. But if we remain the same with the same focus of thinking, with the same understanding, with the same action or inaction, we will have the same result, a relapse and one more repetition will occur. You know that very well. We want something to change. We want things to change from the outside, the situation, the people, the moment. We ask for it. We imagine it. But you have to see whether you're just thinking about it and imagining, clinging to this thing. Do we only enter into the bubble of imagination? Or are we really doing the action for this change that we want? Do we change our mindset, our thinking, our perception? Do we change the way we talk, or do we keep talking the same way? Do we change our actions towards others and the person with whom we have the given problem or situation? Do we motivate ourselves to change and grow? Because people say, I'm changing. I want to change more. I want it to happen to me. I really realize it. And I say, okay, you do realize that. You think about it every day and every other day when you have the time. You believe you need it. I say, this is wonderful, great, conscious. You've come this far. However, do you manage to change your patterns? Do you revise your thinking patterns? Do you change them? Conversations, communication, action. At some point, people say to themselves, well, I don't think I work on each of these levels, because they start talking the same old way. They don't hold on to the change. I did it 1 or 2 times, but afterwards I seem to forget. I don't have the time. Yes, the old things will come back, the old results, the old consequences. When we are not consistent in acting for the change we need, we cannot, for example, learn to dance or create something with just 1, 2, or 3 attempts. How did you learn to succeed in what you do? Your work, your hobby, sports. With daily learning, effort, repetition, so that you can acquire those skills, so that the habit comes. Be more confident, more resilient in what you do. The same goes for any other thing you want to change. Your communication, with your mindset, with the revision of your thought patterns, with letting go of the past. You have to be active and consistent in creating new connections, new neural patterns. Create a new focus. You are the ones to choose and act according to this new focus of yours. And for this to happen, you have to sit in your mental garden and dig in there to see what you like, what you don't like, what you want to change, what you will leave there for now, what you will prioritize, what is more important to you at this point, what to work with, whether in a personal or in a work plan, whether on a career or in gaining knowledge. We cannot work on everything at the same time because we will get lost in the multitude and we will not be able to be successful. We will get tired. A burnout will come. We will increase our level of anxiety. Choose your priority at this point. You have the time now. You feel what is important to you at this point. Which topic is repeating with you? What words come out to you and frustrate you? You can feel it very well. You have your intuition. Just use this opportunity to work on what's relevant to you, to revise it internally for you. Because quite often what happens? We're coming out of our mental, intellectual, emotional garden. We don't want to make the necessary effort, and we start going into other people's emotional psychic gardens, and as we go there, we start to criticize, judge, to feel sorry, to blame, to demand, to control, because we say, look, you haven't changed that. This person is to blame, or this one hasn't understood us. This one has not changed. This guy did that. That wasn't good. See how you think. When are you going to change? Look how long I've been waiting. That's a habit we have, to go into other people's psychic gardens. That's like a psycho-emotional break-in. We go into other people's gardens and we start intervening there. Who are we? Why are we interfering? If someone does this to us, walks into our psychic garden and starts digging through us, pushing us, we won't feel well. We'll see it as violence, criticism, like someone is taking power over us and we won't feel comfortable. If we don't feel comfortable, neither will the other one, because he or she's like us. We have a lot of common elements. If you can feel for yourself, try to see if you go and judge and dig way too much in other people's gardens of thinking, of emotions, of what's wrong with them. Just go back to yourself and dig there. There are enough things that we can do and work on for ourselves. Look at your own psychic weeds and unhealthy emotional habits. There's a lot to work on there. Be responsible for what is yours. In this way, you can learn and change a lot about yourself. But what really has to do with the need for me to change myself, to get to know myself and to work with these steps that will structure me little by little and give me directions that are important to me. The answers are in you. Do not think that you do not have them in you or that you can't reach them. On the contrary, when you give yourself the time to look at yourself, the first time it may not work out. The second time there may be some silence again. The third time the old habits will come out again, to want to escape from your work, to think one thing and not to act according to what you think. The habit of blaming someone else or getting back to criticism may come back. Don't worry. Old habits will come out. Don't be angry and don't blame yourself. Accept that this is part of the process, but consciously start working and say to yourself, wait a minute, that's what I've been doing. Let me see what I can do for myself in another way. Let's get back to where I am, who I am. It's a so-called meeting and work with my emotional maturity. How can we work on our emotional maturity? All these things that we listed are part of this whole process. The previous topic and the previous podcast too. But quite often we talk about how we feel and what happens because someone else made us feel that way. Emotional maturity means that if you transfer responsibility for your life, for your emotions, for your weaknesses to others, this is a guarantee for sadness and dependence. The sadness will increase, and the dependence will increase. Working with sadness and breaking dependency means that we must take responsibility for our personal choices. What we do, how we do it, what we say, that's our choice. Start talking through ego-healthy communication. In the previous podcast, we talked about shadow, unhealthy ego communication. Now I want to draw attention to more healthy communication. How do I feel? I feel sad about this situation because I realize that I only trusted the words that someone said to me, and I was not responsible for myself. I myself should have checked whether these words were valid for me so that I could take action. You see how I say it? Through the ego. That gives me a sense of sadness. I must have overtrusted, which means I was acting naive. I didn't check. I wasn't responsible and didn't make the effort to check and learn. And that's why this negative result happened to me. I can also say that through the shadow ego communication, the one that is more rude and is more hurtful. I feel bad because I trusted what she told me. She was supposed to be a very good friend. She was supposed to be a very close person to me. But actually it came out that what she told me wasn't true, because it all failed in the end. That was very bad. She was guilty. She was giving me assurances about this. She didn't evaluate the risk. She said she had experience. It's very easy to approach things this way. Or the other guy was giving me a guarantee of how professional he was at what he was doing, and I trusted his professionality. And at some point, I start to blame him. He's not competent. Look where he got me. How the other one is not worth anything. And so on. It's just that when we have this dependence on judgment, insult, control, and transfer of responsibility to others, they are responsible for everything that happens to us. We will not change things. We will not realize them. I will not change. It will be very difficult for me. we will continue to live in relations with each other in the division, in the shadow of the ego, in negativity, not taking responsibility for oneself. The time has come. We repeat that all the time. A time of personal responsibility. To be responsible for pain, for shame, for fear. We said to celebrate the negative result and the failures. Learn from them. We must change. What happened? What happened? The other thing is to stay in the situation now. A lot of people think and create probability theories for the future. If this happens, if this comes, if, maybe, if it would happen. It's like creating an imaginary negative movie of failure, fear, and doubt. You don't need to stay there. We said that. Let it go and come back to the here and now. This is not happening here and now. Don't create an escape into a negative future to look for ultimate control. We don't have total control over anything permanent and 100%. We can always expect surprises from life every day. We have to be willing to adapt and trust what we may not know and predict. We also shouldn't run into the past. That's how he's always going to react. Hey, I hear that every single day. I don't know for how long. That's how she'll react. Why write it down? Why am I telling her that? I know how she's going to react. She might not even look at it. She'll probably reject it again. She won't say anything nice. Well, that's how that woman has reacted to this point. Go beyond that. What are we actually saying? That she won't change? She will not change? That's a projection we have created. Or, I won't change. Or, I at this moment have the resistance to change. To write these words that I do not want to write. To act in a way that I have never acted before. To meet the person in a way that I have never met before. And to challenge him or her. For us to say things to each other that so far we've been avoiding. At this moment, who is afraid of change? We are. We don't want to change our mindset. Or the other thing we often say is, okay, wait now, something happened. We hurt each other, whether through our parents, whether through our partners, whether through a friend. There are also betrayals and wounds, and we can suffer a lot. Okay, that happened. But let's see some other opportunity while we're still here on this earth, in this relationship, on this path, this growth, to change as many things as possible and cleanse. Try to erase them. Some people are so caught up in the understanding and the pain and the inability to go away from it and forgive ourselves and accept another option. Some people even say, it would be easier for a criminal to change and become nicer than it is for my mother or father or partner. That's scary. I mean, we think that someone very bad could become even nicer in small doses than our mother. How do we feel at this moment? That means we see so much maliciousness there. But if we hang on to whether our mother or father or our partner or a given malignancy connected to some other loss, this will poison us every day. Don't think that you're running away from it. Just because you're going to sit somewhere and try not to think about it by declaring this person a total enemy, that they have a total inability to change, and that nothing good could happen. However, this remains as an internal imprint in you, because your mother and father, even if they leave this world, they live in you. They are a part of your inner superego, the inner theater of the mother, of the father, of the parent, of the experience, and our partners also step inside us like prints, because they build on the images of the authority of the mother and the father. That is, at some point, we ourselves become pursuers of ourselves. And by rejecting to allow ourselves to change ourselves, to say, thank you for this. I'm happy about it. It's so hard for us to reverse this injury, insult, and anger. Look at where such an issue stands in your life. It's something that won't allow us to reach emotional maturity. This theme of emotional maturity is very deep. There are so many layers. There's a lot of things to say to you, to help you. I give you examples using myself and themes that we've worked on with other people who've come to me. I hope they're clear to you and push some buttons inside of you, giving you some awareness. Do you see links to yourself? Because this is something that is at the limit of awareness, the limit of the insight to come, that is to press something that lights up in us. But when it appears, we will have to work on it. If we don't work, we'll come back with the same strength. You certainly understand that because you know when and what you're getting back in your life. Some people call and say, oh yeah, you know what happened? You told me to do that, to try to understand it in this way. I understood where the problem came from, but I still did the same thing, as if it was something stronger than me to change it. Yes, something on the inside is stronger. That pain, fear, failure, the unwillingness to be consistent, or the unwillingness to be consistent in this change. But that does not mean that if we fail once or twice, that we cannot be successful and victorious on this path, this subject, in this relationship, in this model, in the future, as well as those people who we think can't change. They carry something else within them. We just haven't seen it the way we need it. The requirement that we carry within us, someone to be just like that, just a certain way. And when he or she does not respond, of course, to our narcissistic need, we begin to stigmatize him or her. We need to work on and desert such narcissistic demands. I say this to you with all my love and respect for each one of your pains, processes, and paths. Likewise, I have had to deal with myself and my own personal experience. Because if I don't do it myself, I'll just be stuck in those personal traps of mine and personal topics that everyone has to work with. Understand that now it is really necessary, and you have all the resources to change and work on it. The other thing, which is also a part of emotional maturity. Emotional maturity. Learning to talk through the self and stop projecting onto others. So, someone tells me, I'm sad. Isn't that how you teach me to say, through me, how I feel? What happens to me? How I perceive it? And I say, that's right. And they start in, I feel sad. So far, well, from the fact that she did not learn to support me for my work, as I told her. This is where we failed. The old mechanism came out. I'm sad. Okay, but because she did something. You see the example. We're again transferring responsibility. She hasn't changed. She's not understood during my hundreds of repetitions what she should do, how she should say it, how she should behave, and in what way she should support me. And because I've been so patient, I invested so much of myself in it, she doesn't understand how many compromises I've made with the time to wait for her. In the end, she didn't do it again, and that's why I'm not well, and I'm feeling extremely sad. How unfair it is. I'm so fabulous, so patient, so explanatory, so giving, but again, he, she, it, we, you, them, there's always something going on. It's a contradictory message. This is again something that is not the real work and awareness for me, my sadness, because we name the feeling, I feel sad, but it's someone else's fault. He didn't understand. We have to get it back to ourselves. I feel sad. Okay, what of me makes me feel sad? If I use the same example, I'm sad that I gave him so much time. I'm sad that I fantasized about the other person having to change because I'm asking him to. But does he owe me? Or I have to change myself because I owe myself. If this position is important to me, I'm sad because I don't have the courage to leave and change these things for myself. I'm sad because I don't want to be the one responsible. That's what the ego expression means. The emotional maturity of being responsible for my compromise that I have decided to make, for my time that I have decided to give, for my delusion, for my naivety. Only then will we change and grow. Only then will we understand that we need to let the other person out of our suffocating, obsessive, accusatory embrace. The other one will give us back, of course, in the same way obsessive, accusatory, narcissistic, shadow behavior. And then what do you get? Everything we know very well in human communication and at the level at which we have evolved to this point. To blame ourselves, to criticize ourselves, not to be tolerant, to destroy ourselves, to contain and increase pain, guilt, criticism, division, war, mental, emotional, between countries, a destruction. If we have to, we'll break down and start all over again on all levels. But it's time to realize this process, to grow up emotionally and connect with the ego communication. Harmonious, healthy, we should talk. How do I feel? And where is myself in this whole situation? Another thing, if you give yourself a command, the attitude, I want to hear myself, to be able to hear all these steps, points that we looked at in our meetings. If you have this attitude, set in yourself this intention. Everything starts from our intention. I choose to see the truth about myself. I choose to hear myself through these patterns. I choose to see my own deficits. I choose to take responsibility and take back and disinvest in the blame, the requirements, and my personal responsibility. To disinvest from the other, to get back to myself so that I can start working on myself. That's where we have to start from. When you have set yourself that intention, it means that you are entering the first important step, the choice to work on yourself. It's very responsible to want to work with ourselves and see the truth, because when we want it, it will come. But the question is, do you have the power to move on when the truth comes? Then you'll have to act. If you refuse to act and you just whine and talk to prove how much we grew up, how wise we are, we talk to Maggie, we read some stuff. And if we don't, a much heavier sanction will come. Because when something is realized and it comes into the clarity of our field, when we ask to become a tool for ourselves, for change, that's a responsibility. If you don't take on that responsibility, then there will be suffering, pain, and as you know, the processes will come back. I feel angry. Someone betrayed me, behaved in a certain way. What's the feeling? Anger. I'm angry. I'm angry because this woman betrayed me. She used me. She manipulated me. How is this possible? Okay, this is our first reaction. It's the primary one. It is more animal and with the need to see the harm of the other. It's normal and it's primal. But once we get through this first phase, the first step, then let's work towards it. Wait, okay? I need to throw out my anger and disappointment because the outside world, the outside situation, or this guy or that girl served as a face for that pain. Okay. I behaved a little bit, but let's see how to figure out what's happening to me. That is, to come to a second timeline after we have already acted primarily in the ego shadow of the reaction, to go into the second timeline to say, wait now. Well, let me get back to this anger towards myself. Let me see this situation and how it relates to me. I'm angry because he or she did that. And what did I do? Whether I've approached this person or myself in a similar way. This is a time of thinking after our primary reaction, thinking, going through it, calming ourselves, and seeing that realization. That's the limit of choice that's going to happen. This is a very important point. From this point, we will either evolve and continue to work with ourselves or not. All that we said and repeated. I won't repeat it because I have a habit of repeating it. Let's get it in our heads because we're just like kids. If we do not repeat like crazy, we very quickly forget and our mind erases it. But there is this limit where we are either going to evolve and change and start to act, truly act, change our mindset, understanding, appreciate what we have, know how to change, stand responsibly behind ourselves. Or, if we are not ready and we delude ourselves, what will happen? We'll come back there. The next situation will come, where again others will be guilty. On the street, there will only be people who drive poorly, disorganized. Who even gave them a license? It's how far they've gone. Yeah, at work, I'm always going to find a team that can't think. They don't know how to integrate what it needs to be. I'll always have to take over. How long will I do it? I'm always going to run into some bosses who won't appreciate me. They're always giving me more work. I'm going to get into relationships where my partner cheats. They're not loyal. Of course, this is the limit where you will choose. Something within you will choose whether it will bring you back and will start a traumatic repetition. Do you realize how many years purely humanly and in our relationship we are in the process of traumatic repetitions? How many years of traumatic repetition to communicate through pain, through accusation, through criticism, through manipulation, through this person is good for nothing, those people are bad, this is his or her fault. We're right here and we're coming back. Look at how many years that is. Our lives, our friends' lives, our mothers', someone else's. A long, long time. However, now the time has come. That's why these crises are happening, these more serious pressures and threats, so that we will see them, to move us away from this pattern so we can move forward in this new evolution, personal growth, confidence in ourselves, in knowing ourselves. Now is the time. If we do not do it, it is already clear to you what pains and problems you will be moving towards, because they have been happening for too long. But this is already too great a destruction. We will choose where and how we move. I'd encourage you to listen to my podcasts again. Imagine them as a seminar, as a therapy session, as something you can go back to. You're always going to hear something that will arrange something for you in a new way and go back to what you want to work on. Take a test. My clients and I do a test. In our sessions, we speak this way, as I'm doing with you, and they say, "Yes, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's interesting. Now I get it. I make some connections. I understand." Because I ask them if it's clear. It's all clear. However, when the client leaves the office, enters his or her daily life, if they have not written down anything, have not put anything on paper, any of the points that they need to think about and work on, after 20 or 30 minutes, you know, everything we've said, explained here in the moment, and as we spoke, it was clear to you, your consciousness starts to erase it. Some of the information is going to be erased. You're going to forget it. It's going to go back into the subconscious because we're pushing the subconscious processes and dynamics. We're pulling out some things on a conscious level from the subconscious where we look at them, adapt them. But if we don't keep them, if we don't hear them, if we don't replicate them, they will get erased. And then when the clients come back, they confirm it and say, And I only remember these things. Was there anything else? You're right that I have to take notes. You're right that after that, I really lose that information. That's very usual. And in the next session, we repeat a lot of the information that we talked about in some other previous sessions in order to reaffirm it, so that it comes out once again, to consider it. We forget and delete that part that's not comfortable to us on a conscious level. We forget and bring back to the subconscious these realizations, those important things that our ego resisted, has not yet reworked. We're taking them back. So I'm saying that every second and third hearing of this information will make it easier for your consciousness and ego to absorb that information. They actually censor it, bolstering protection. And you know about the personal lie as well. We've talked a lot about that, and there are several podcasts on our website about our illusions, our lies, how we create these masks in behavior and in our reaction. So listen and see how you really forgot some things. You're going to be like, all right, that was true. Yeah, she talked about that. How did I forget it? Test and try these things. You will see, and you will give yourself this feedback. It's very important that we really know what we want. Today, a colleague and a friend of mine, Vesi Petkova, posted a picture of one sentence, which is very valuable and very important. I'll finish with it. It says, when you know exactly what you want, you're aligned with yourself. You don't take everything you're offered. So work with what you want, what exactly you're going to work for. What's your priority for that which you will do? These things to become more aware of yourself. Then you won't take everything that's offered to you and go through traumatic repetitions. Work with these things. They may come out simple and elementary, but they're clearly structured guidelines. We're doing this analysis, looking at things this way. A lot of things can start to change very quickly for us, but it's all started by us. It all starts with us. We're all together, and it can get better. Love to love. Fill your heart with love and light, and connect with benevolence every day. Encourage the field of your kindness to grow.